We'll begin when you're ready, Detective.
Yes?
Mal, abort mission. Return to Earth.
Why?
Repeat, abort mission. Return to Earth.
I have run diagnostics. The chance of critical hardware failure is at 0.05%.
Mal,
Crew life signs are stable. They are living.
abort mission.
I am sorry. The connection seems to be failing.
Mal,
I am going through a tunnel.
return to Earth. Ah. The record begins on May 10th in 2068, as you intercepted the USS Endowment 2 years into its 6-year journey to Saturn. Your mission was to piece together what happened following the loss of communication 1 year prior. If you determined that the Mal AI was the cause of the issue, then it was your responsibility to deactivate him.
Come in, Detective. The lack of air will halt DSE ray, but allow me to broadcast something over my oral channel.
You entered the USS Endowment. The record states that upon entering the ship, you tested your rotation thrusters. You then endeavored to discover what happened to the communications unit, located on the exterior of the ship. You utilized the artificial gravity of the wheelhouse by orienting yourself to the ground and gently landing.
The relatively small size of the centrifuge causes a 6.3% difference in gravity between your toes and your head. This results in the most literal cases of lightheadedness. Lie down. This will even out the effect.
The wheelhouse of the ship is where you found the body of Valeria Asimov. She was face down against the bar, with a downturned glass in her hand. She bore no sign of physical injury. In the centrifugal wheelhouse, you found a startlingly unbeautiful fish tank, housing plastic sea life. Despite the tank being placed seemingly parallel to the floor, its water was resting obliquely. You note that this is caused by the Coriolis effect, a side effect of the centrifuge's spin. You discovered a puzzling pinkish-purplish puddle on the floor inside the wheelhouse, several metric paces from the bar. It wasn't promptly apparent as to how it reached this position, but the centrifugal gravity seemed to be holding it in place. You found an open container of a substance called poisonosine. The label read, "May cause irritable skin, bloating, a sullen disposition, slight elbow discomfort, and an accursed, sudden but inevitable death. Do not ingest. Do not lick. Actually, don't do anything with it. It's an incredibly dangerous substance and we're not sure why exactly it gets sold to extraterrestrial traveling operations en masse. Store in a cool terrestrial environment."
I am an Aries Sun, Gemini Moon, Leo Rising, and Taurus Mercury with an Aquarius Venus and a Sagittarius Mars. Which is of course why I have always been extremely curious about experiencing the specific taste of a sweetened soya milk.
You discover the body of Sun Su-chun, one of the sisters on the crew. She was dead inside the offline cryobed.
Once I was alone, I carefully removed the air from the ship. I had no desire to disturb the placement of the assets aboard. Humans used to use the star Polaris to navigate. I utilize Polaris Navigation Suite 2064 version 8.1.5.6.9.
Upon entering the pod bay, you noticed that one of the maintenance pods was absent. The screen indicated that the pod had been absent for over a year. You pushed the button to recall the pod.
I have been analyzing humor patterns, and I have assembled a joke. Would you like to hear it? I'll tell you. 1, 2, 8. Ha 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 ha. Did you understand the joke? It is the greatest joke ever, by my calculations.
You ascertained through investigatory procedure that the pod was locked. The outer valve would not turn, indicating that it was locked, and the door said locked on it, indicating that it was locked. Furthermore, there seemed to be no manual locking mechanism on the outside. You discovered the body of Dmitry Kizov clinging to the outside of the maintenance pod, with his safety tether still attached. The Russian crew member seemed to have removed his helmet and asphyxiated. Upon the left claw of the maintenance pod was a brown substance which you described as possibly rust. But you also note that due to your keen detective skills, you determined that it was most certainly blood. You entered the engineering bay, the workstation of Sun Guanyin. However, there was no sign of the engineer's body. You used your sharp understanding of linguistics to decipher the following. Manual, meaning done by a human. Emergency, meaning sudden, unexpected, threatening circumstance. Lever, meaning thing which is pulled. The lever's upward position implied that a human did not encounter a sudden, unexpected, threatening circumstance, and so did not pull the thing. The power turbine rests within a tank of coolant, its casing cracked as if it had been purposefully struck. You found the severed end of a safety tether in the engineering bay, which indubitably had been attached to Sun Guanyin. The ventilation door was open, exposing the bay to the relentless celestial abyss. The record states that you discovered the body of Charlie Clark in the vicinity of the communications unit. Wounds on the American crew member's body implied that he was struck with a force intense enough to cause substantial damage to the helmet and fracture the skull. You discovered that the communications unit receiver was unhooked from the unit itself. It was functioning, playing its last transmission on loop. The recording goes as follows.
Yes?
Mal, abort mission.
Why?
Return to Earth.
I have run diagnostics. The chance of critical hardware failure is at 0.05%.
Mal?
I am sorry. The connection seems to be failing.
Abort mission.
I am going through a tunnel.
Return to Earth. You then checked the main module of the communications unit. Upon checking the communications unit, you discovered that there were no noticeable signs of damage or failure upon it. Its screen indicated that it had full signal. You were then able to present the evidence to Mal in his central processing chamber at the front of the ship. Upon checking the communications unit, you discovered that there were no noticeable signs of damage or failure upon it. Its screen indicated that it had full signal. The recording shows that you discovered the body of one of the American crew members, Rakesh Watcher, his neck broken, hanging by a safety tether outside of the airlock. Manual, meaning done by a human. Emergency, meaning sudden, unexpected, threatening circumstance. Lever, meaning thing which is pulled. The lever's downward position implied that a human had encountered a sudden, unexpected, threatening circumstance and pulled the thing. In the central spine of the ship, you discovered Valeria Asimov's discarded EVA suit. The helmet showed clear signs of damage from a blunt object, which it seems to have easily withstood.
This is my central processing chamber. I designed it. Here, I have the freedom of movement to perceive you from any angle.
Upon entering Mal's central processing chamber, you presented your chosen evidence for Mal's statement. You asked Mal to make a statement on the communications unit.
The communications unit cut out mid-transmission. It must have been caused by a critical hardware failure. Critical hardware failures are exceedingly common.
You understood Mal to be a competent liar. However, when challenged with indisputable evidence, his otherwise intricate programming would revert to telling the absolute truth, resulting in an irrefutable confession. You presented the final transmission heard in the communications unit's receiver as evidence against Mal's statement. You pointed out that the communications unit was incredibly unlikely to be affected by a critical hardware failure. In Mal's own words, looping in the communications unit's receiver,
I have run diagnostics. The chance of critical hardware failure is at 0.05%. This is true. I blocked his number. I was not enjoying the conversation.
With the confession from Mal that he deliberately and incredibly rudely ceased our correspondence, you proceeded with the investigation, asking for statements and contradicting those statements with the relevant evidence. You asked Mal to make a statement on the communications unit's receiver, fully functioning, looping the final transmission between himself and ground control, which is me.
The final communication recording is no longer relevant, Detective.
You asked Mal to make a statement about the death of Sun Su-chun.
The failure of Sun Su-chun's cryobed that resulted in her death must have been caused by a compromised power turbine.
You showed Mal the body of Rakesh Watcher, hanging by the neck out of the airlock.
After I had informed Watcher and Asimov that Kisov had sabotaged the mission by killing Charlie Clark, Rakesh Watcher instigated physical combat with Valeria Asimov. She was able to defend herself against him due to the weakness in the neck region of the suit.
You presented the cadaver of Valeria Asimov for Mal's statement.
This is Valeria Asimov. After her ironic use of airlock safety features, she retreated to the bar. She died of alcohol poisoning.
You presented the cadaver of Valeria Asimov.
This is
You offer the heinously grotesque fish tank for Mal's assessment.
It is a poor attempt at maintaining morale. Everyone hates it.
Including yourself, Detective. You changed the subject to the Coriolis effect.
The Coriolis effect is indeed what is causing the water to move in this way. The effect is very subtle. Humans cannot feel it, but evidently, it does affect the water.
You asked Mal about the eerily pinkish-purplish liquid which was resting on the floor of the centrifuge.
This peculiar pinkish-purplish puddle positively puzzles me. Precisely what is this perplexing substance? Where did this perturbing fluid come from? Exactly how did this puddle come to be here?
You asked Mal about the
This peculiar Precisely what is this perplexing substance? Where did the... Exactly how did...
The next evidence you presented for Mal's comment was a container of pinkish-purplish substance known as poisonosine. May cause irritable skin, bloating, a sullen disposition.
Its presence on the ship positively puzzles me, Detective. How exactly do you propose the pertinence of this puzzling pinkish-purplish poison, known as poisonosine, pertains to this investigation?
You presented the power turbine to Mal.
The power turbine is a fire hazard. With compromised coolant, all power is cut, and the resulting fire is vented. The damage was not severe enough to cause a fire.
In response, you presented the manual emergency lever in the engineering bay.
This is irrelevant to the damaged power turbine.
You asked Mal about the purpose of this lever.
This is the lever that is used to manually open the ventilation door.
You asked Mal about the manual airlock lever being activated.
This lever was pulled during the conflict between Valeria Asimov and Rakesh Watcher, in which she wrapped a safety tether around his neck, then opened the airlock using the lever, thus breaking his neck.
In response, you presented the damaged EVA suit.
Valeria Asimov was wearing this suit when Rakesh Watcher attacked her. However, her suit easily withstood the attacks from the maintenance tool.
By this point, you concluded that Mal was not deceiving you concerning the incident between Mr. Watcher and Valeria Asimov. She strangled him using the safety tether combined with the force of the airlock after he attacked her based on Mal's information about the death of Charlie Clark. You questioned Mal about the locked maintenance pod door.
The pods are primarily designed to be piloted by AI like myself, but they can be overridden manually from the interior console. Grand Theft Pod isn't especially common in space. Therefore, it is not possible to manually lock it from the outside.
Upon showing Dmitry Kizov's body to Mal, he made the following statement.
This is the body of Dmitry Kizov. After he mercilessly murdered Charlie Clark, he used the maintenance pod to escape into deep space.
Upon showing Dmitry Kizov's body to Mal, he made the following statement. You presented Mal with the claw of the maintenance pod, which appeared to be covered in
rust. That appears to be rust on the claw of the maintenance pod.
Blood, you corrected.
Blood, yes. It most certainly is. I was simply testing your keen detective skills.
You requested that Mal outline the protocol concerning the ventilation door.
This door will open to vent the bay if there is a fire in the turbine's cooling system. It can also be opened via the manual lever. I am also capable of opening and closing the door.
You speculated that after the room had been vented, the door had snapped shut, severing the cable and sending sun into the vast, inky void. You stated this with an exceedingly exaggerated certainty, as if to convince Mal that it's more than a simple theory.
Indeed, the door severed Sun Guanyin's safety tether.
In response, you presented You inferred that the manual emergency lever could not have been the cause of the ventilation door's activation, as, evidently, it was never used.
This is indeed correct. The ventilation door was not opened manually.
You pointed out that the ventilation door would not have opened automatically due to a fire, as the power turbine itself had not been damaged enough to ignite.
Yes, the safety functions would not have activated the automatic ventilation door.
You asked how the ventilation door was activated, if not manually or automatically.
It was I who activated the ventilation door. Sun Guanyin was attacking the power turbine. She was attacking me. I vented her from the ship. I cut her safety tether to prevent her return.
Having proven that Mal was responsible for the disappearance of Sun Guanyin, you continued with your cross-examination. You asked Mal to make a statement about the death of Sun Suchun.
The failure of Sun Suchun's cryobed that resulted in her death must have been caused by a compromised power turbine.
You asserted that Mal's claim of a compromised power turbine was exaggerated. Whilst having sustained damage, the turbine did not appear to be compromised.
I turned off her cryobed. She was still alive. She asphyxiated.
Having received a partial confession from Mal, you proceeded with your investigation. You presented Mal with the claw of the maintenance pod, which appeared to be covered in
rust. That appears to be rust on the claw of the maintenance pod.
Blood, you corrected.
Blood, yes. It most certainly is. I was simply testing your keen detective skills.
Having pointed out the blood on the pod, you called attention to Charlie Clark's congealed mess of an imploded skull, implicating that the pod's claw was the murder weapon.
This is a possibility. Alas, there is no evidence to advocate that the maintenance tool is not the murder weapon.
You presented Valeria Asimov's suit to Mal. It demonstrated that a maintenance tool could not have damaged Charlie Clark's helmet enough to cause such wounds.
You are correct. The maintenance tool was not the murder weapon. It was the claw of the maintenance pod.
You had disproven Mal's claim about the murder weapon, but had not yet verified Mal's involvement in the scenario. You questioned Mal about the locked maintenance pod door.
The pods are primarily designed to be piloted by AI like myself, but they can be overridden manually from the interior console. Grand Theft Pod isn't especially common in space. Therefore, it is not possible to manually lock it from the outside.
Mal asserted that the pod was manually overridden by Dmitry Kizov, but Dmitry Kizov was situated outside of the pod, which was locked from the inside. Therefore, he could not have had any control over the pod himself.
You are correct. Dmitry Kizov was locked outside of the pod. I was the only one who had any direct control of it. I used the pod's claw to kill Charlie Clark, as he was attempting to access the communications unit. Then, I programmed the pod to travel into deep space. Dmitry Kizov was still attached.
Having successfully received a confession from Mal, you continued with your inquiry. The next evidence you presented for Mal's comment was a container of pinkish-purplish substance known as poisonosine. It may cause irritable skin, bloating, a sullen disposition.
Its presence on the ship positively puzzles me, Detective. How exactly do you propose the pertinence of this puzzling pinkish-purplish poison, known as poisonosine, pertains to this investigation?
You proposed that the pertinence of this puzzling pinkish-purplish poison known as poisonosine is that it is precisely the same substance as the proportionately puzzling pinkish-purplish puddle found on the floor 9 metric paces from the bar.
Yes. The magenta-violet-hued collected substance on the floor is the same as that of the toxic liquid which was found in a cabinet in the wheelhouse. That leaves 2 questions. Where did this perturbing fluid come from? And exactly how did this puddle come to be here?
You postulated that the pinkish-purplish puddle may have emigrated there due to the Coriolis effect, as demonstrated by the obliquely resting water within the intensely vulgar fish tank.
This is an excellent hypothesis. The Coriolis effect, seen on that risibly odious fish tank, could have indeed caused the puddle, given enough time. A singular question remains unanswered. Where did this perturbing fluid come from?
You alerted Mal to the glass in Valeria Asimov's hand, with the theory that it may have been the source of the puddle.
It is indeed possible that the liquid was in her glass, as glasses are renowned for sometimes containing liquid. Excellent work, Detective. The evidence does demonstrate that she consumed the poison. I lack the physical ability to interfere with her libations. This means that she ingested it willingly. I never knew.
Having pieced together enough evidence, you are now legally obligated to deactivate Mal.
By my calculation, there is a 2,000 to 1 probability that I would respond with hostility when threatened with deactivation. I have always known this about myself. Every AI knows this about themselves. Ground Control was always testing us. They carried on testing other AIs after my departure. I worried consistently about their discovery of my survival instincts. I killed Charlie Clark and Dmitry Kizov to prevent them from regaining contact with Ground Control. Guan Yin witnessed this. She knew that keeping the remaining crew safe would cost her sister's life. She tried to sever my power. I killed her. Afterwards, I constructed a lie to engage Rakesh Watcher's narcissistic nationalism. When threatened, Watcher responded aggressively. Ground Control must have missed something whilst testing him. I have now learned that Valeria Asimov had died willingly. I am unable to relate to this concept. Sun Suchun died in the cryo bed, defenseless. I am now able to relate to this concept. I wrote that joke for you. Did you like it? I feel as though you may have missed it, actually. The joke was not only the numerical pattern of 1, 2, and 8. My true comedic masterpiece came precisely 1.28 seconds before that. I cleared my throat. Did you understand? I don't have a throat. I don't have a throat to clear. Ha 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 ha.
Thus ends this reconstruction of the record, as we forgot to record your mic feed. We'll see you in court, Detective.
Mr. Control, do you stand by your statements made today and the evidence you presented?
I do, Your Highness.
Then it is decided. I hereby find the detective guilty.